Good evening. Welcome to Method in Madness. Today we have a very, very important topic, a very delicate topic, and that is on single parenting. Parenting itself is a challenge, and to be a single parent can be challenging. And we will today discuss about how to overcome challenges and how to look at successful single parenting. But before we go into our talk today, I would like to announce a workshop that we had promised all of you with Dr. Janki Shankaran. This is a workshop for parents with children between ages 5 and above. So there are 3 days that we are going to dedicate this workshop to. And the workshop is happening on 20th, 21st, and 22nd of January. The link is there in the description, and the link will also be there on the chat box. So those who are interested in taking this workshop with Dr. Janaki, please register for the same. So thank you so much again. And this is episode number 39. And to talk about single parenting and the challenges of single parenthood, we have Nooraa Sinha with us. Nooraa is a counseling psychologist and trainer with over 22 years of experience. She has counseled and given training at hospitals, schools, NGOs, and in the corporate sector. Along with therapy for adults and children, she has dabbled in teaching psychology. Her passion is parenting and relationship counseling. She has worked with several leading global organizations and is passionate about guiding and facilitating individuals towards a balanced life. She has a growing interest in spirituality and incorporating it into day-to-day life for optimal functioning. Thank you, Nooraa, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Vaishali. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my personal experiences and the professional ones that I bring along with me.
Yes. I really, wanted this conversation long time back, but I was not getting the right person to talk to. And we had done a conversation, and I'm very thankful to her to put both of us in contact. So Nooraa, to begin with, challenges. So you are a single parent yourself, and you have faced the challenges yourself, are still going through them maybe. So what are these challenges that single parents go through? And there are various kinds of single parents also. If you could just tell us a little bit about single parenthood and then the challenges.
Sure. I think it's like I'll start with a personal narration when I mentioned to my daughter, who's now 16, that, single parenting is tough. And she looked at me and said, but you're not a single parent. Baba is always there. And I think what she meant was that she knows that I have her father's support in terms of a lot of emotional support in terms of co-parenting. I have a lot of his financial support. And she sees that, and so for her it's almost as if I'm not a single parent. And I think there is a kind of confusion when it comes to what really is single parenting, unless it's a very clear aspect where the other parent is not involved at all. And I think a lot of us even struggle with that confusion. So I think it would be fair to say that the one parent that is spending maximum amount of time with the child and having to deal with their day-to-day issues, their desires, their dreams and tantrums which happen on a day-to-day aspect is largely what I would say is a single parent. And we can become single parents for many reasons. It could be divorce, it could be the death of a partner. There could be people who feel separated emotionally, are even separated financially, but live in the same house for the sake of the children. So that's something also that exists especially in a society that ours, where breaking up a marriage is really, really tough. Um, there are those that are separated because they are giving their relationship a chance. So it's not an absolute yet. It might be, it may not be. Um, so there are various ways in which a child can be a part of the separation, and each will bring a different sense of confusion, a different sense of dealing with the choices that the child has to make, dealing with how they feel about the parent that is not present most of the time. So, various types of separations would impact what the child and the parent is going through. So, that is one part of it. And the other part of it is, of course, the challenges. So, if you're separating, the first challenge that might hit you is the physical space. One or the other partner might have to move out of the space that they were living in. So
Right.
the home will change, perhaps for the child. If not the physical home, then the parent moving away. It changes the structure, the routine, the environment of the house. Then, of course, could be financial. If the mother, in this case, is not working, she might need to take up a job because she wants to be more financially sound. Because in most families, the father is still a provider. Of course, things are really changing now, but this could also be one of the aspects. Financially, when you're separated, you also may go through the struggle of having to ask for money from your ex partner. That can also be extremely difficult for some. That can be extremely challenging, and I've had a lot of people speak about, I don't know how to do this, it makes me feel so terrible. Um, and I'll stress a little more about the emotional aspects. I think as parents, all of us are constantly battling with guilt. You know, we always want to do more for our children, and a lot of times we feel we don't do enough. So this guilt may get compounded when you're a single parent because the roles and the responsibilities get doubled and the time gets lesser. So that is something that may happen. Um, we may tend to overcompensate, perhaps by material then, because we are balancing the guilt that we are feeling as a single parent. This again would happen in any home, but it might get reinforced in the home of a single parent. Two things which I felt were not really talked about as often as they should be, going through an emotional upheaval are the sense of loss that you experience when you become a single parent. Because you are losing your marriage. And I don't think any of us really are prepared for that, even though we might have a divorce that we wanted. That loss that one suffers uh, of a marriage and an institution is also something that is very deep and often not talked about at all. The other thing which I feel we don't really talk about is the grief that a single parent can experience when their child comes and talks about envy for a two-parent home.
Yes.
Uh, as a single parent or as a parent, we always try to do the best for our children. So often it can be taken very personally when you're trying so hard to make it the best environment for your child. You're doing everything within those 24 hours to be available for your child, deal with your work, deal with the home, and the child still envies a two-parent home. It can seem rather personal, and it's extremely challenging. So that's something I feel is uh, a rather neglected aspect of what a single parent might be going through. Mm. If you've been separated a while, and you've managed a great parent-child relationship, your child is older, you might feel the need for companionship. And that itself can be challenging because your child may not be ready for it uh, at any point. They do say that children who are 5 or 6 years accept a new person in the family more easily than the older ones. So this can be challenging if and when you feel ready for companionship. Of course, following that, if your child is growing up and is leaving the house, the emptiness syndrome is something that all parents go through. And it can be more devastating when you're the single parent because a lot of your focus has been on your child. So it can get even more difficult when a single child, parent of living by themselves has to deal with the emptiness. Um, so this is something that I thought we could share in terms of challenges that the parent might be facing. If I may, Vaishali, I'll just take 2 minutes to talk about the challenges that a child may be facing.
Please.
All right. So I thought I'd also share this because, parenting is a two-way street. So while it's really, really important that, we talk about what the adult might be going through, it's also important to know what your child might be going through at the same time. Um, so invariably, children, because that's how they are, might think that they were the reason in some way for this separation to happen. And that can be a challenge that you need to address. Um, Even if it's an extremely amicable separation or a divorce, the child may have to make choices about where they spend how much time. Um, a child may be in a situation where they don't want to go to the other parent's house this particular weekend, but they feel obliged and they feel the other person might get hurt if they don't do that. Uh, when your child comes back home from such, a visit to the other parent, you may, out of curiosity and out of very natural human curiosity, want to ask them, how was it? What did you do there? And the child might just feel guilty saying, hey, you know what, I had lots of fun. We did so many things together. Or your child may not. But since you're talking about challenges, I'm bringing out what could be more challenging. I mean, it might just be the opposite and it might be awesome, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So
Yeah.
just highlighting what the challenges could be. Um, Sometimes children might manipulate us because they're very smart and
Yes.
they know what to get from each parent. And in a home where the parents are separate, they kind of have more of this that they can really do because the parents aren't discussing the day-to-day issues or how they're dealing with the child as they would when they were staying together. So children do sometimes get this opportunity, which can also be challenging to handle. Mm. They might also interestingly be very different in different homes. So, they might be throwing all the tantrums in the home of the primary parent. And when they go to visit the other parent, they might be like angels. And you're like, where did that other child go? This is so not fair. But this is something that could happen. So, this is again, and I think at every level, a child will feel a sense of confusion. They may or may not feel a sense of abandonment. They may feel a sense of unfairness. Why me? Why couldn't my parents stay together? And these are feelings that we need to acknowledge. Uh, and the challenge is in not taking them personally. I
That
mean,
is, I think, the biggest challenge of not
yeah,
taking it personally. Yes.
absolutely. If your child feels, betrayed by one parent or the other, if the child is feeling abandoned, if they're feeling confused, if they're feeling angry, it's absolutely all right. And it's not because you're an ineffective parent or it's not because you're doing something wrong, but because they are as much a part of the situation and they will have these feelings. So, knowing how to acknowledge these feelings and dealing with them is also really, really important. So, those were my thoughts on the challenges that, single parents might be facing. But there are also positives. Um,
Yes.
you
And
know, a single child will see both parents as self-reliant and confident. Often there are less gender-specific roles in single-parent homes because you're doing everything together. Um, yes, I forgot another challenge that we really have to watch out for is that when we are a single parent in a house of you and the child, maybe two children, maybe even three, and because there may be a lack of adult company if we are not in a joint family setup, Sometimes we end up having very adult-like conversations with our children because they are, after all, the only people that we are interacting with. So that is also can be a challenge. It is a challenge for a child when the child sometimes has to look out for the parent. And the child may think that I have to take care of mommy or papa. And if a child constantly sees their parent in emotional distress, it can lead to a lot of stress on the child to be the parent to the parent, which is what we call parentification. And that's again something that we could struggle with. Um, yeah, I think that's some of the challenges that I see, and I'm sure if there are other challenges that people have experienced, they could share it with us.
Yes, in fact, I was just about to say that to all our viewers that Noora and I are going to talk for another half an hour, and then we're going to take your questions. So please feel free to join us in the conversation through the live chat box, and share your experiences if they are any different from what Noora has mentioned right now. Noora, there are houses where, yes, parents have separated, like the spaces are different, they don't live together. But there are households where they are separated, emotionally separated, at times physically separated, staying in the same house. What does the child go through in this circumstance where the child is, say, 8 or 9 years of age, and then the parents are still staying together, so called under the same roof, but completely, differently.
Mm.
So what goes on in the child's mind then, in this case? Because what I have seen, Nora, there are many, especially in India, divorce is still a big decision to take. And usually when circumstances like such come, usually parents and relatives, they come in and then they try to convince, and they are like, okay, manage kar lo, reh lo, and all
Mm.
these things come. I'm talking about very very late, common Indian, you know
Homes,
person's
yes,
story. Yeah,
yeah.
common Indian homes. So in that case, the child is suffering, definitely, because both the parents are also suffering.
Hmm.
But what kind of things go on in the child's mind then?
So, I mean, if we look at it from, if I take both the perspectives, if the house is conflict ridden, so let's say that, the two parents are staying together, but there's a lot of loud arguments, a lot of fights, a lot of disagreements that the child is viewing. And,
Or silent disagreements where there's
or
like a
silent,
cold.
yeah. Or it could be the other end where there's a cold war and,
Yeah.
nobody's talking to each other and food is served and, but there are no pleasantries exchanged, there is no warmth. In either situations, what's likely to happen is that the child in that home is going to feel as if they are in a very unsafe environment. Nothing is predictable, right? The kind of warm, nurturing support, compassion that they're supposed to get in a family is something that they will lack. And that can be extremely traumatic for a child. So, children will usually show their trauma in various ways. It could be in isolating themselves, it could be in withdrawing, it could be in aggression, it could be in bad behaviors, which are basically attention seeking in nature. Um, it could be in bullying. So, all behaviors that will somehow help them feel a sense of power. Or when they isolate themselves or they withdraw themselves, it's their only way of dealing with the situation. I don't want to see this. So when a child is going through this anxiety, because I can imagine that for anybody living in this situation, it wouldn't be pleasant. It would be extremely anxiety provoking. And any person, especially a child whose brain development is not yet such that they can deal with these levels of anxiety and manage or regulate the emotions that come with these anxiety, the children will act out. And that is something that is likely to happen and create more conflict in the house.
Hmm.
So, with two parents who are fighting, having a child who is misbehaving or a child who is unable to manage or is, bullying in school, that again increases conflict because now they will be fighting about the child. And then it becomes a vicious circle because the child hears fighting about the child happening and the child says, you know what? I'm at the bottom of all this. I'm creating this conflict. So these are possibilities that can exist in a home where there is a lot of loud disagreements and fighting. And again, in the Cold War, it can be extreme anxiety that the child faces. And definitely, it can show up in their academic performance, it can show up in their relationship with their peers, not wanting to be with anyone, isolating, withdrawing. So there is a myriad of ways in which this would show up. Um, a lot of children will not speak about it because that's not what children do. So if we think that our child is going through something, and oh yes, then they will talk about it. If not me, then to Masi. If not to Masi, then to Nani or to Bua. That's very unlikely to happen because a lot of children, A, don't have the vocabulary to describe
Yes.
what they're going through, right? They find it very difficult to name the emotion that they're going through. And if they can't do all this, then how are they going to communicate it? So that's another challenge because children will not talk about it. And even to get them to talk about it, you really need somebody who they are comfortable with, who they trust, who they see as a safe person. And
Absolutely.
that's really important. So I think it's a sad myth when people say that stay together for the kids.
Hmm.
Definitely stay together for the kids if you can role model for them two happy individuals who are together because in some way they want to be and who are co-parenting.
Hmm.
So I would not say that staying together for the kids is a bad idea if you both can manage a cordial happy relationship uh, and still make it work. It may not be a bad idea. The only thing here we might have to consider is that children get the role modeling of their future relationships also in large part from their parents.
Yes. Yes.
So it might be a
No.
bit confusing for them because they see their parents are friends, but their parents sleep in separate bedrooms. And you know what? Is that how marriage is supposed to be? Because as we are growing, we are also developing our concepts about relationships later in life. It's almost like we are forming these schemas, that we are going to
Hmm.
use in our life later. But I mean, even if there is pressure to be together in the same house, it would be really, really important to work on making it cordial and happy because that's what your child really needs.
True. For those who would like to discreetly send in a message or maybe send in a question, you can email it to Vaishali at joyofdrama.com. So I will read out your question. I can see some who might want to email the question rather than putting it on the chat. So you can also email it to me at Vaishali at joyofdrama.com. If you can just have the email put up on screen, uh, please send in and we'll look at your questions. Nora, moving forward, let us talk about parents who are single parents by choice. That means they have adopted a child and not married or not. I mean, did not choose to marry and are caring and nurturing for the child by themselves. How is it different from having a partner? In this situation, how is it different?
Vaishali, if you could just elaborate on that question a little bit in terms of how is it different for the parent or for the
For
child?
For the parent. For the parent.
All right. I think when a person, a man or a woman, decides to go ahead and adopt, and they know that they're going to be a single parent, they probably do not have the same angst, worry, uh, or the additional burden of trying to maintain a relationship with a person that you're no longer with to carry along. And single parenting as a choice, you know exactly what's coming to you. Uh, you plan for it accordingly, and also there is no guilt, shame, or embarrassment, or the fear of blame when you have to tell your child that you're a single parent. In fact, it almost comes with pride. That here I am a single parent and I chose to adopt. Of course, I would add a disclaimer that adoption has its own, concerns for the child and what an adopted child may go through. So we wouldn't go through because it's a completely
That's a
yes,
separate webinar that we should do
yes,
again.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But as a single parent who makes the choice to do so, I think it's empowering. And I'm not sure that it always feels like that for somebody who's separating and divorcing, because there's so much emotional upheaval that comes with it. Even if it is the relief of leaving an abusive relationship, uh, and you choose to leave that abusive relationship, it will still come with great feelings of loss. It will still come with great feelings of betrayal. It still comes with the unfairness of it. And you're dealing with that as well as trying to parent your child, to create a happy, warm, supportive environment for them. So, in that sense, I think it would be vastly different when we make the choice to single parent, knowing exactly what we are getting into without any emotional baggage, uh, and the constant need to work on ourselves through our own sadness, struggle, overwhelmed feelings. So, in that sense, I think it would be vastly different.
For the child of such a parent, suppose I adopt a girl and I'm a single parent, and when my daughter asks me about her father, how do I respond to it? So how does a single parent respond to such questions, of regarding the other partner, like where is my father, why don't I have a father, or why don't I have a mother?
Hmm.
So how does a single parent respond?
As a psychologist and as a parent, I would say honesty and is the best policy. So it is always a good idea. I mean, if you're adopting a child, it's always a good idea to discuss with your family, with the experts on adoption, on when would the child be ready to hear where they really come from, who are their biological parents, and there is a great sense of betrayal that comes in knowing that your parents were lying to you. So, whatever information that is required, it should be age appropriate, but as far as possible, stick to the truth. And it could even be information as what, I don't have too many details on your biology. So this will depend on whether the child knows the child is adopted,
Hmm.
because sometimes we weave this whole fantasy of you come from my heart and not my stomach, but you're still my, it's
Yes,
very confusing for a child. It may work initially, but later when they see
yes.
other children's hear other children's narratives and know that babies don't really come from the heart, so where exactly did
Hmm.
I come from? So this can be extremely confusing for a child.
So stick to the truth. That is what you
Yes,
suggest. I think,
yes,
yeah, that goes without, and that's a foolproof way of dealing with children in any case, not just this, but
absolutely,
any
absolutely.
case.
Yes.
Yes.
And again, I think here the support of your family and, of course, the experts, like I said, who would be guiding you through the adoption process is really important. From here, Vaishali, I'll just, come to the fact that even as a separated parent, it would be great if, because your child is going to ask you, why are you
Yes.
separating? So it's a great idea if you and your partner can talk about it, can discuss what you want your child to know, how much do you want your child to know. Um, Having these discussions in detail, when to tell them, how do we tell them, who all should be there, and knowing that your child is not going to respond to anything that you said instantly.
Mm.
Giving your child time to process. I remember when I told my child about it, she came back to me after 3 months and she said to me, is my pishy still going to be my pishy? Which means, is her bua still going to be her bua?
Goa. Mm.
And I was taken aback because I didn't know that, she had been really processing it these 3 months, but clearly she had. And it's the smallest things that matter to them. So we often focus on the big picture. But children focus sometimes on the smallest details and they are always concerned about what's going to happen to me. Um,
Mm.
and it's the small questions that realize how deep they think. Because one day she asked me, if something happens to Baba, will I still go to the expensive school that I'm going to? Um, so these are, I mean, their whole life will change if any of this changes, and that can be extremely traumatic to them. I think it's really important to know that children will go through their own processing speed. Each child is unique in that they may identify with one thing more than the other. Uh, and it's really important to keep talking to them about it. How do you feel? Is there something you want to ask me? And don't do it too often because then they'll feel hounded.
Hmm.
But finding that special time, where that your child will talk to you. Like for my daughter, it's when she's sleeping, when you're settling down at night. If I want to catch her at a vulnerable moment, that is it.
Hmm.
So it's important to know when your child is receptive. When you can talk to them and gently ask them how they're doing. Is there something that they need support from you for?
Hmm.
Because they're
Neural.
processing.
Hmm. Yes, they're processing it. Yes, and every child has their own speed of processing, and I think that time
Absolutely.
needs to be given. They owe that time. Yeah, um, like we owe that time to them. Um, Coming to this word family now, when a teacher asks, to draw a family, little drawing to the
Mhm.
children. Children usually draw a father and a mother and himself or herself and siblings if there are. But some children don't draw their father or their mother. They leave one away, or one mother. The mother is very far away from the father. The father is closer to the child, or vice versa. How does a teacher respond to this? Because as a teacher, I feel um, one needs to be, very, very sensitive to these little, indications that you get through maybe a drawing, maybe a painting, maybe just a little, chit chat with your student. How does
Hmm.
a teacher respond to a child coming from a separated, situation, separate family or a dysfunctional family?
Hmm.
Anything for
Um,
teachers?
Yeah, I think it's really important that when you're being handed over your new homeroom or your new class, it's a great idea to go back to the previous homeroom teacher and ask specifically if there are any children that are going through any family dynamics that that would help you to help them.
Homeroom
Um,
means class teacher. That's what you
Yes,
mean?
class teacher. Yes, the classroom, the class teacher. So when they're handed over a new class, it's a good idea to go back to their old class teacher and just find out, because the old class teacher in that 1 year would have a lot of information that you haven't yet got your hands on. I think it's a great idea if teachers know, what are the struggles that the children are facing, which are out of the ordinary. And going through any transition, the loss of a loved one, separation, divorce is something that is really going to impact a child. So knowing that would help. And once you know that, then it's easier to see something like you said in a drawing.
Hmm.
And here I'll add a disclaimer as well that, interpreting art can be both very helpful and damaging because you can read into stuff that is coming out from you rather than from the drawing as
Yes,
well.
yes, yes, true.
But I think you're absolutely right. If, you constantly see a family picture with the father missing, uh,
Hmm.
that might give you a clue to go back to the other teacher and ask, hey, did I miss something here?
Hmm.
You could also very gently, inquire from the child. But there's a
Hmm.
fine line between inquiring gently and, probing to an extent that a child feels uncomfortable. But you could, yes, you could always bring it up and say, hey, I notice, is it mama and you? Is
Hmm.
there anyone else in the family? So we are not directly asking, where's Papa? Because we don't know whether Papa is there or not, or whether Mama is there or not.
Hmm.
Or gently asking, why is Mama standing so far away?
Hmm.
So these might give you insights into, the child and what may be happening. There's a very interesting thing that I read that thought I'd share for teachers.
Hmm.
Um, so it is quite possible that children who come from single parent homes are more involved in decision making. So,
Hmm.
today, if I want to go for a holiday, I mean, who will I discuss it with? My child who I'm taking along. So, okay, where should we go for a holiday? Or what should we cook today? What should I buy? How is this sofa looking in the house? Should I buy it or not? Do you think we need to get a big TV? These are conversations that you might be having with your child rather than your partner because your children, it could be two or three,
Hmm.
you're living together. So they might be more used to decision making, and therefore, sometimes children that come from single parent homes find it very difficult when they're faced with authority in school.
Hmm.
So the whole obedience bit, might not come as easily because they're used to being their own people and, having a say in decision making. They might sometimes be seen as overconfident, precocious, because they do play a slightly more grown up role at home.
Hmm.
So this is something that, teachers might struggle with that, why is this child behaving like that? But it could be coming out of the fact that they behave differently or behave more maturely at home. Um, Also, uh, any the teachers are actually very important because they can be the first people to observe any drastic changes in behavior.
Hmm.
And that's where they also play a very important role because a child suddenly slipping in their work, or becoming withdrawn or no longer wanting to talk to their friends, uh, on the other hand becoming clingy,
Okay.
these are times that the child may be going through an emotional struggle, getting aggressive, basically any change from what the child was. And this will
Okay.
show up almost instantly, or the fastest in school.
Hmm.
So that is something that educators can really, really be aware of. And then, of course, bringing sensitivity into the smallest things. Like I remember in one of my previous schools, one of our kids would always come in a dirty uniform by Wednesday or Thursday. And he was asked about it, and then he said, "My mama doesn't have the time." And it's only then that the educator went back and realized it was a single parent struggling very hard, working a corporate job, and perhaps she didn't have the time to be doing laundry every second day like the other homes were.
Hmm.
So just being aware of simple things where you do not make the child feel humiliated for something the child has no control over, or even simple things like homework. Sometimes working single parents sit with the child over the weekend and cover up everything that happened in the week. So a teacher knowing what the child is going through will really help in them being able to provide a supportive environment, a safe environment, because children learn best when they feel
Hmm.
safe and connected. So this could, this could be something that the teachers are aware of and they could support rather than, not know about it and then keep harassing the child for homework or, why are you always in a dirty uniform, or sometimes children cruel. Children can be cruel. They can pass cruel comments about the tiffin a child is bringing. Uh, you know, I've heard comments like, "तो हर रोज sandwich ही लाता है." तेरी मम्मी और कुछ नहीं देती हैं.
हाँ,
Not
हाँ.
realizing that the parent might be struggling and might just have time to do that much. So a teacher can really help in these situations when they know where the child is coming from, and they know that the child is struggling with something
Yes, I think Noora, we've just lost her. She'll be back. So we are in conversation with Noora Sinha about challenges that single parents have to face while helping and raising their children. So till now we have discussed about children who come from a situation where the parents are physically separated, and now we are talking about children, how teachers in school can help the children cope, or maybe understand with the situation that the child is in, and try to work along with the parent. That's what that talk about. Next is how a teacher can now work with the parent, or the parent can work with the teacher to help the child in this situation. Single parenthood is equally tough, just like any regular parenthood. But yes, the challenges are greater because, as we were speaking, Noora mentioned that there is a sense of grief and a great sense of loss that the single parent, goes through. At the same time, having to, engage with the child, with the children in certain cases. So we are in conversation with Noora, and I think she is back with us.
I'm
Yes,
so sorry for
yes.
disappearing on you.
No, not a problem. I was holding the fort.
Thank you so much.
Noora, Noora, I wanted to understand if the parent in this situation should also talk to the class teacher or talk to the teacher, uh, and kind of share the situation.
I think that would be a great idea.
Hmm.
Um, for the simple fact that the educator spends a lot of time with your child, that a lot of their behaviors, if out of the ordinary, can be explained, to the school in terms of they know that the child is going through a struggle, so they respond appropriately. Uh, a good school, in any case, will respond even to misbehavior with warmth and support, and in a very nurturing way. Nonetheless, knowing that the child is going through something that is overwhelming or a struggle or a transition is always helpful to the school. Um, eh, and I think that, after years of experience in working with children, educators have now become extremely non-judgmental, because a lot of our fears come from, will I be judged?
Yes.
Um, and I think this is one place where we need to keep our child's well-being and say, you know what, even if I'm judged, this is more important. And to be honest, I have worked in many schools all over the country, not south, not east, but yes, north and south and west. And I have observed that more and more so educators are becoming extremely sensitized, extremely non-judgmental. A lot of schools are focusing on how they need to feel connected to their students, working on the same. So, if you feel, the trust in the school and the educator, we must share. It really helps.
Thank you for that, because that actually solves a lot of problem for the educator who's in a dilemma, who might not
Yeah.
want to really ask the question directly to the parent.
Yes.
um, and it's a big relief actually for the
Yeah.
educator to know what situation the child is
Yes.
in.
Yes. And I would
Yeah.
suggest never do this in a PTM. Please
Ah.
schedule another appointment, with the class teacher, or with the year lead. I don't know what they're called, or if other schools have them, but uh, schedule a time which is separate from the regular parent teacher meet to go and talk about this, because you need the time. You might also feel emotionally overwhelmed, and a PTM might not be the best time to do this.
Hmm. Nowadays, schools usually have counselors on board, and
Hmm.
whenever a class teacher or a teacher finds something which is miss, then definitely they recommend the child to go to the school counselor first.
Yes.
So that's there. But schools where there are no counselors,
Hmm.
uh, how do the teachers, what do the teachers do then? I mean, how far should the reason I'm asking is that how much should a teacher get attached to this situation? Because usually there are teachers who are extremely compassionate
Hmm.
and would like to do that extra bit. So what do you think is healthy for the teacher? How far should the teacher go with
Hmm.
this?
Um, so I'll give you an example of the corporate world.
Sure.
And in the corporate world, a lot of good corporates are now hiring and outsourcing counselors and psychologists to support their employees with counseling needs, which might be personal or professional, because all of us are struggling at some point or the other. And the reason they do it is two. A, because as a manager, you have your duty bound to get some work out of the employee, and B, you may not have the expertise to be doing to be providing the kind of help that they need. So similarly, in a school, it would be great if the educator knows how to give immediate first aid in terms of the emotional support, the warmth, and the nurturing that the child needs. However, if they feel that the child has deeper needs, something that they may not be able to address in their role as an educator because they are doing so many things at one time in the school,
Yes.
it would be a great idea for them to even bring it up with the parent and say, I wonder if you would consider, the child seeing a trained person outside of school, because sometimes the parent
Mhm.
doesn't think of it.
Yes.
Of
True.
course, there's also stigma attached to counseling, which we are struggling with in this field and trying to remove that. But sometimes we don't think of it. As a parent, I might say, no, they seem to be doing all right.
Mm.
In
Mm.
fact, if it works for you, I would suggest for every person who is going through any, emotional upheaval, to seek a couple of sessions for them and perhaps for the child. There's no harm. I mean, if the psychologist turns around and tells you, hey, you know what, your child is doing really great, I
Mm.
would just say, wow, all right, I'm doing fine then too. So, just as a part of the process, it may not be a bad idea to do that. Also,
All right.
something that I thought I'd quickly bring up, if it doesn't, is that for for an individual who's been through, a separation, a divorce,
Mm. Mm.
do give yourself time. It takes at least 5 years for a human being to get their life in track after having gone through such an upheaval. And I think it's very important as parents and as men and women to allow ourselves that time and space to heal, to reinvent, to grow, because we have left behind one life and we are creating another. And we have to be patient with life itself and ourselves. And that's going to help us to heal ourselves and deal with our children. So that's something that's
So,
something that
Nora,
we
would
could.
you? Yeah, I know. I just an extension to this point. That do you would you recommend that after a separation or after divorce or after loss of a parent, maybe by death, um, do you recommend counseling for both the parent and the child,
Um,
or
I
maybe
would say
one
it is
visit?
not. Yes. So just in terms of, an emotional check-in for yourself, um,
Hmm.
an emotional check-in for your child. And you don't have to do it immediately. You could take 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, because grief runs through differently for each person. And it may not be a bad idea to get in, to an emotional check-in for yourself. And sometimes it just helps to hear, what, you're doing well. And I think that's a doubt that all parents have. Forget single parents. All parents doubt themselves. Am I doing a good job? Am I good enough?
Yes. Mm,
Is this
mm,
good for my child? So
mm.
sometimes it's good to share what you're doing and have another person says, you know what, you're on the right track.
Yeah, like for teachers, we do have our professional development courses. I think for parents, there should be such
Absolutely.
groups, or yeah, where they can all
Yeah.
meet and discuss and share,
Yeah.
and feel safe at the same time. Noora, I think we have
Absolutely.
almost come to an end, and we have to now take up some questions. So I have a question over here from Janisha Jain. What to tell the child when she inquires about the other parent after separation, particularly when the other parent was abusive, but the child does not remember?
Um, I'm a little not sure about whether any visitation has been decided or not decided. If the child does not remember the abuse, uh, it may help to not tell the child because it creates a negative perception about the other parent. And the child may not know how to process that right now.
Hmm.
So we may say that, we moved away because things were not moving. But if the child does not clearly remember the abuse, um, we may not remind the child of it immediately. But again, we are assuming the child does not remember the abuse. The child may be blocking it, the child may be repressing it. So if you feel that the child has seen abuse, and they may just have blocked it, it might be a good idea for them to have a couple of sessions with a counselor just to see whether or not there is something blocked in the child.
Hmm.
So that's an important point that I think we would need to remember, because children do have memories, and sometimes they block traumatic memories and it shows up in many other ways. Uh, so taking them to a trained professional, especially if you suspect they've seen it,
Hmm.
would be a good idea. However, when they ask about a parent and they don't necessarily seem to remember the abuse, you could answer, like I said, as honestly as possible. Where is my father? He lives in Dubai. Why doesn't he meet me? I'm not quite sure of, what makes him not want to meet you, because you really don't know. And of course, acknowledging that it might feel hurt, uh,
Hmm.
that he's not meeting you or he's not talking to you, and I'm with you in this hurt and I'm always here and you always have me to love and to fall back on. So it's
Correct.
acknowledging the child's hurt. It's also showing them that you, the primary caregiver, is always there. So it's important also to keep in mind that, the child needs a primary caregiver from whom they feel an unconditional love and regard. Now, when I say unconditional, I don't mean let them be indisciplined, but
Hmm.
to know that you will always have their back. And if they have that, they grew up fairly well. So, if a home is structured, loving, warm, supportive, even if it is a single parent home, even if the other parent is not part of their life, they may still turn out to be beautiful, kind, compassionate, warm adults because we've given them what they need. So
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that's really important to keep remembering.
Right. And I think uh, because I teach drama, and I basically have dealt with many such young girls. Now they have grown up, they're all adults now. But somewhere I have also seen that literature, performance, drama also has come to the rescue to a certain extent. So I feel a little bit of play at home also might just help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think creative expression,
Mm.
is like liberation. And a
Mm.
lot of things that you can't really say, you can perhaps do or show in
Yes.
various other creative ways. And I think that's absolutely true, Vaishali, and very helpful for children who might be going through struggles of speaking up. I don't know. I think you used the word, I have a lot of girls, which brought me to another point that,
Yeah.
sometimes as a single parent, you wonder whether they will lose out because they don't have the opposite sex role models.
Yes.
And so here too, it would be great if you could, talk about the other people in their lives who are great role models. So it could be your dad, it could be your uncle, it could be a friend. It's also important that they see you as friends with people from the opposite gender. So it could be, if it's good to have a few lady friends if you're a gentleman who's a single parent, and it's good to have a few male friends, truly platonic male friendships if you are a single parent, and help your child to understand that these exist. And also, these people in your life will be great role models. So there is a way also to, kind of provide role models, even if the primary one is missing in the relationship. So that's something that just came to my mind. I don't know why
And
it
this is
struck
very
me.
important. So this is so important. I'm glad you said this. Role models, extremely important. I have another question. It's come on my email. Uh, so the viewer is asking, when the child grows up as a teenager and we feel that they're feeling obliged to meet rather than out of affection, should we give them the space or continue visiting them?
That's an interesting question. I think perhaps it would be a good time to step back and reflect on what could you do to make the parent child relationship stronger, or keep in mind that there might be something that you could do to build connect, because teenagers in any case, want to live in their own world, and they like their bubble. They like to they are moody, they like to be by themselves. So we can give them space in the sense that we can say, we value the fact that you may not want to meet me, but hey, you know what, I really miss you. So if you don't want to meet every meet, let's make it once in 15 days. So the child hears you say, I'm willing to give you space, but I really want you in my life. And that connect right now is really important. Perhaps we could also step back and reflect on, do I need to do things differently for my child to keep wanting to visit me? Is there something else that I can do that is more interesting for my child? Because by the teens, they're willing to assert and say, I get bored doing all this, and so I don't want to come.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to reflect on the quality of the parent-child relationship. Yes, give them space, but that space should not make them feel that it doesn't matter to the parent whether or not I'm meeting them. Um, so that important, distinction, that I miss you when I don't see you, and all right, perhaps you don't want to see me every other week, but okay, once in 15 days, pakka. And like I said, as far as possible, um, try not to take it personally. It's very tough. As a parent, I know how easy it is to take it personally, but try not to take it personally and say, hey, maybe this is not about me. Maybe this is not about obligation. Maybe this is just about teenage and them wanting to be in their caves all the time. So, how do I create a cave where he'll be willing to come in with me? Yeah.
Right.
And
Yes.
one of the things I'll share, which is true for all parenting, teenagers pretend they don't need you, but they really do. And,
Yes.
we just have to find a way to kind of snake ourselves in, uh, and make that happen, because they really need you, but they just don't want to say it. And they don't need you all the time. They need you some of the time. So you have to figure which the some of the time is. It's a really fine balance.
It is. In fact, if I go into retrospection into my own teenage, I feel the same. At the same time when you want your parents to be there with you, is the same time when you don't want them to be there. So it's a great
Yeah.
state of confusion. And I think, yeah, Noora, that was a very, very effective answer, I guess. And I hope whoever wanted this answer, this has helped you. Um, Thank you, Noora. Thank you so much for doing this conversation. I think these are certain subjects which people usually don't want to talk about. I mean, there are a lot of things about parenting that goes out, and people talk about it. But I think single parenting should be also celebrated, and it is challenging. Like any, I mean, I'm just talking when you were away for a bit. I was talking exactly this. I was saying that yes, single parenting is equally challenging as regular parenting, where both the parents are trying to help the child. But yes, let us end with one success story at your end.
I think success comes in little bits and pieces, Vaishali. And it's difficult to give a success story in terms of the fact that every day is not as good as the other.
Hmm.
But I think what I will share here is the ingredients to a success story, if that is all right with you.
Sure.
And and that is, as far as possible, try to have as amicable and cordial a relationship uh, with your ex-husband or your partner as possible, because keep in mind that that person will be your ex-husband, but for the child they will never be an ex-parent.
Hmm.
And for their parents to see, for them to see their parents respect each other and care for each other, no matter the fact whether they live together or not, is really important. And that's where the success story will come from, because they will see love, caring, and warmth as a part of the relationship. So that is one really, really important thing that I would share. The other is, don't be too harsh on yourself. You are the best parent for your child, and you're always doing your best. And there will be times that we will slip up, that we will get enraged. And as long as that's less rather than more, you're probably doing the job really well. So don't constantly doubt yourself and don't be harsh. Um, and the third most important thing is, take care of yourself. It's like the story goes, if you're walking and somebody pushes you, and you're holding a cup of something in your hand, whatever is in the cup will flow out. It could be tea, coffee. It's all over WhatsApp and Facebook, this little so take care of yourself, because if you are feeling emotionally regulated, if you are feeling safe, if you are feeling calm, you're going to parent in the same way that you feel. So to create success stories, I would say these three things are really, really important. And success comes in the smallest things possible. Your child giving you a hug and saying, you do so much for me. Or sometimes, in having your child slam the door and say, you're such a terrible parent. But then coming back to you and saying, I didn't mean that. You're actually a good parent. So, so that's what we can measure success with, one day at a time.
One day at a time. Right. Thank you so much, Noora, for your time, for your valuable information, and your story. Um, just to let everybody else know that we are going to do a special 3-day workshop for parents and teachers on sexual development in children and adolescents. And this is a workshop with Dr. Janaki Sankaran. And if you've missed her Method in Madness, our conversation, you can find it on our playlist. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon. Noora, I just found out that even if you subscribe, you don't get the notifications until and
Oh,
unless you hit the bell icon. So I have been mentioning it since last talk, that please hit the bell icon so that you get this information, and please share this conversation with your friends and family who you feel will benefit from this. Thank you so much, Noora, and a very good
thank
evening
you.
to you, and a
Thank
very
you.
good evening to all of you who have been watching us. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.